So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Welcome back, everyone, to Call Me CEO. This is your host, Camille Walker. Today, we are talking about unlocking the brain, your potential, and what you are capable of doing with the expert Kristin Graham, who is a former journalist and ran culture and communities at corporate America, at places you might know, named Amazon. She is now a keynote speaker that travels all over the country, helping people to do less things better and unlock their true capability of what is possible. So, Kristin, I am so thrilled to speak with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh my gosh. I know. We said as soon as we started talking, we're like, we should probably just start because you and I can go in so many directions, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you meet someone and initially right out of the gate, you're like, we could talk forever. And I love this so much. So I'm so thrilled that our audience gets to hear that today of what you have to share. Please introduce yourself and kind of how you wove yourself into the place where you are now.
Oh, that's funny. I was just at my college campus where I was an undergrad and I was talking to the university students there and they had my bio up behind me. And I said, only in hindsight does it look strategic. Most of us, when we're in the middle of our journey, we're just in the middle of our journey.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, usually what I say is I'm a professional nerd. That's kind of gone wherever I've been. And I became accidentally corporate. You mentioned in your intro that I was a former journalist in Chicago. That's what I thought I was going to do. I was very excited to be able to ask people questions and get paid for it. I was always that nosy kid. And 9/11 happens and the world changed, which is reminiscent of recently. And I went into corporate and discovered that I could be just as curious and impactful internally and telling stories on behalf of teams and business units and brands. So that was really fun for a long time. And during that time, I left the Midwest and went out to where I am now, which is in Northwest, and joined the .com boom. And so I did that about 16 years ago and got to really be in that global, fast-paced world. And I should also mention while having my babies. So I have two now teenage boys, but all of these ages and stages brought me different opportunities and different challenges, frankly.
Oh my goodness. So I'm curious about what was it that took you from being at a very high level corporate position and feeling, obviously, I'm assuming good pay, you were in a position that you were seen as an expert and you were compensated well. What was it that gave you that kick to go off on your own and go into the unlock your brain route?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm a very transparent person. So I will say I was paid almost too well. And that was part of the hook to stay in it. I think a lot of us can relate to, I call it the velvet rut, where we know that we're in a rut. It could be in the cities we live, the jobs we have, the relationships, but we're wrapped up in all this velvet. It's just comfortable, or other people are comfortable. So I definitely had that. And when you get a lot of financial success, it's a golden handcuff for a reason. And also I am a Gen Xer. So I was wired to want to check a bunch of boxes. I was that latchkey kid. I was always like, I want to get this title, I want to do this. And I never allowed myself to slow down. And so those two things converged, having checked the boxes that I thought I was supposed to check. And then also that element of how much can you always just keep going and at what cost?
Yeah. So you're in this really comfortable place. You're being paid really well.
Very well.
What gave you the kick? I mean, I don't think we know yet. What happened?
Yeah, you're like, keep talking, woman. Yes. No. So one thing, so I became one of the .com millionaires. And I say that because I think a lot of people can relate to sometimes giving yourself permission means you've got enough pennies under the mattress type thing. So I don't want to be disingenuous and say, oh, I just decided to take a big risk. I waited the first time I had two major changes until I had money in the bank that I felt allowed me
Okay.
to try something different. And the first time I tried something different, I actually took a pure sabbatical and just took time off with no title, nothing. And it was during that time that I had space to actually think about, what do I want to do versus what should I do? Or what looks good. And leaving that first inclination when I walked away, and I had oxygen without importance. Because let me just be clear, you can get addicted to being important. And that could be, by the way, in your kids' lives. It could be in your partners. It could be in a company or on behalf of a brand. It could be as an influencer. I've always said that workaholic tendencies are one of the most socially acceptable forms of addiction.
Oh my gosh.
We're getting deep. Like we're like 2 minutes in and I'm like throwing it down.
I love it.
And for women, one of the challenges that I discovered in all of my opportunity, let me say that again, the challenges and all the opportunity is you become this role model and you stop believing in what you're selling. And I was only a couple handful of women at that level, and people were looking up to me for something that I was feeling hollow about. So there was also that element of, where is authenticity? So the first time I took that space, and in that space, when I was no longer getting called up for all the coffees, I was no longer important because of my achievements or my LinkedIn profile. I really got the space to say, what do I want to do? And that's when I went back and went to Amazon, which is just like the university of business. And it was fun because at a business that could have almost 1 million people, depending on the time of year, there was no chance of being overly important. And I loved feeling like I was a university student again. So that was it. And then at a large company like that, it's up to you to make your way. And so I had a couple of opportunities. So one of the things I put forward is raise your hand, try things, and volunteer. A large majority of what I get paid now to do as an entrepreneur, I started out volunteering to do.
Oh, interesting.
So many of us want to be perfect before we make a product that we offer to the world. And I'm living proof of the opposite. People will absolutely give you grace if you're willing to try. And so I was able to really see that and hone it constantly there by volunteering, by stepping out there, by asking people. And I mean that from my speaking and my training, but more than that. It was almost those hours of practice of like, I do not have to be the best, but I can be me doing it. And that's where, when COVID came, I was like, if the world can change, so can I. And I stepped out, and it's been 2 years this month.
Oh my gosh.
On my own 100%.